Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 3 of Freedom Matters Live. My name is Becky Blaylock, and I'll be your host today. We are excited today to have a special guest on the show, Miss Bonnie Anderson. She is a local freedom fighter in the Katy area. If you didn't know, she ran for Katy School Board this past election, and she is always watching them like a guard dog. And she recently made national news whenever she found some books in the school library and noticed, first of all, she saw that there was an event scheduled for an author to come and speak at her kid's school. Seems harmless, right? But she looked into this guy, and he is an incredible advocate for CRT, critical race theory. That is what he pushes, and he writes these children's books that have these values in them. So she kind of made a big fuss about it and said, hey, this is not right. You can't be teaching these racially divisive things in schools. And she got the meeting postponed or canceled for now. We think they might try to reschedule it, maybe off campus, I believe. We'll have her clarify that when she comes on. But Bonnie is great. She's an amazing freedom fighter, and we love having her on the show whenever we can. So she's up next. But first of all, I just want to promote our upcoming rally. Just a reminder, we have the Freedom Defenders Rally on October 24th in front of the Sugar Land City Hall at 1 p.m. We're going to have some live music, and then 2 p.m. we'll have speakers. We have several great speakers confirmed at this point. Dr. Richard Urso is one, and we have some people who are going to speak out on their COVID vaccine injury. So please save the date, and there will be more information to come. Okay, and without further ado, let me bring Bonnie on screen. Hey, Bonnie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, happy to be here, Becky.
Yeah, for sure. So in your little intro, I kind of let everybody know what you've been up to. You've been busy the past couple of weeks. So why don't you start off and tell us, a lot of critical race theory is still kind of a new subject for some people. They're just starting to grasp what it is. So why don't you just tell us what that's all about?
Yeah, that's it's widely misunderstood, and I'm still learning about it. It's decades old. Well, it's the child of something called critical theory, and then that's actually the child of critical legal theory. So these have been around for decades, and the theme of all of them: critical theory, critical legal theory, and critical race theory. The themes of them are Marxism. It's that society is made up of categories of oppressors and oppressed. It's the idea that language does not accord to an objective reality, but it has to do with power dynamics. So that's why we hear a lot of people outraged at the different terminologies and language terms that people use. They're offensive, or they're you're using privilege, or like that. It's the idea that the oppressed, because we have the oppressors and the oppressed, are impeding a revolution. But when they adhere to the cultural beliefs of their oppressors, then they would have to be going through re-education sessions. So the whole idea is that society is systemically racist. It has to be completely dismantled. We have to dismantle all societal norms, relentless criticism of all people who are the oppressors. And in the case of critical race theory, the idea is that white people, because the way that this country was founded, a lot of this links into history based on 1619 rather than 1776. So the way that this country was founded and the way that it's moved forward is so systemically racist in education and legal and business and everything, is that we have to just dismantle it and start over. So that's
now, so 1619, I've heard that and I can never hold on to what that means. What is the difference in those years?
Sure. So 1619 is the arrival of the first slaves into the colonies. So the idea there is, and I don't know a lot about it, but I believe the The author of the 1619 material won a Pulitzer Prize, but then I think it was pulled later because it turned out to be wrought with unfactual data, basically.
Really?
Yeah, and while it is true that slaves were brought into this country, and I absolutely think that's something important to teach people and to teach children and to talk about as a mark in our history. That's not the founding of this country. I mean, so.
And I mean, is there anyone our age who grew up not knowing there were slaves in this country? I mean, we studied the Civil War as part of history,
Right. It's the difference between teaching and then just shoving down kids' throats until they apologize and are ashamed for what they are, basically.
Right. And it's so insidious, right? The way that they, create. There's the oppressor. So there's one group in society that oppresses these other groups, right? And they get people at each other's throats. They are the enemy. And the end goal is, well, the Marxist government will come in and save you. We will make everything equal for you, right?
Exactly. The point, exactly. And that is the point, is it's Marxism. And the idea is you want people to be pitted against each other based on anything. And the current one is race, so that the government does have to come in and save you and heal these wounds and reunite the country.
Yeah. You could say they're doing that with COVID as well, the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated.
Exactly.
So take us back to when all of this started. So your kids brought home a flyer for this event, right?
They did. So I have 2 third graders, they're twins, so 2 8-year-olds, and they came home with the flyers for this author visit in their backpacks. And I'm just in the habit of looking at, I'm one of those parents. So I review everything before they're allowed to have it. And I opt them out of a lot of things. They're not allowed to have any technology, iPads, anything at school. Because that's the way that a lot of the indoctrination happens. That's a side note. Anyway, so I'm in.
I agree with that. Yeah, the tablets, the technology. I mean, it makes kids into zombies. Yeah,
it does, and exactly, and that's the way they're pushing out this social emotional learning and this critical race theory stuff also. Because as a parent, you don't have access to what they're watching on an iPad at school. So it's only papers.
They could add screensavers, pop-ups, anything.
Exactly. Yeah. So I look at everything before they get it, and this was just one of the things. And so I immediately grabbed the books from the Cinco Ranch Library online. You can grab your books, and started reading them. And I mean, I was a page in before I started noticing what was going on here. It immediately starts out with the division of the oppressor and the oppressed, because the child in the book, the main character in the book, is a boy of color. And he is immediately dreading going to a school where he's uncomfortable because it doesn't have a lot of diversity.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. And when you sent me the pages from the book, I was blown away. I mean, I didn't expect it to be so blatant as what it is. And so I do have them put together in a little PDF where we can go through it. So let me go ahead and pull that up. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see that here?
Yes.
Okay. I tried to make this as big as possible so people can see it on their phones, but I'm just going to scroll through here, and Bonnie, feel free to comment as we go. So the first one I got is the police officer pulling over the dad and the kids.
Yeah.
And I should say I circled parts of it that I thought were just crazy, the important parts. So you see here, they've all got their hands up in the car. Have you ever seen anyone do that at a traffic stop?
No. And it's just, and that's what this book is filled with, are these he's trying to teach these microaggressions, that they are clearly terrified about being pulled over.
Yeah. So the dad keeps asking permission. Can I reach into my glove box? Can I reach into my pocket? And the officer's like, yeah, I already granted you permission.
Yeah, and that's not a bad practice per se, but it's all the rest of it where, I mean, Jordan, the little boy in the back seat, is just terrified with his arms up. I mean, it's a little much. Right.
So they're trying to sort of, affirm here the idea that Black people are targeted more by police officers and they're scared more, I guess. So the dad's sweating, and he comes back.
And it's the oppressor and I mean, this scene in this book, this is a graphic novel, so it's all like kind of like comics. And this scene is intentional. The author wants to show the oppressor oppressed. The officer has the power. Yeah. The man in the car has no power. He's powerless. So he wants to show this dynamic.
Right. And they show the gun is right there in his face.
And he's staring at it like, oh God, what's going to happen? All officers wear guns. Yeah. I've never seen a police officer not wearing a gun.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, they're not going to carry it in their breast pocket.
Right.
It's going to be on your hip.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's the first page. So this next one, the parents are talking to him about his school. He's anxious and nervous. What are we seeing here?
So we are talking there. He's talking with his parents about the lack of diversity in the school. And, I can't imagine what it's like for you. It can't be easy. And the mom's like, I know what it's like. We have, however many employees, I can't remember, 48,000 and only 1,200 are African-American. And
here it is right here. 1,200 employees.
Oh, sorry, 50. Yeah.
And 50 are African-American.
Yeah. Wow.
And, I was curious. I did the math on that. And the percentage of the population that's Black is 13%, if you look at the U.S. population. And when you do the math on 1,200 employees, that should be 160 Black employees. So 50 isn't like that far off. It's not like there should be 500 and there's only 50. It's 160 versus 50. Again, this is a fake number. This is a comic book where he made up this number himself.
Right, but you're right. It's making it sound like, so somebody who's reading this would think, well, why isn't it 600? It should be at least half. It's just the insinuation is, and then the mom and the dad start arguing because she's saying that you have to learn how to play some kind of a game that's, you have to sell the devil to get ahead.
Yeah. In order to be successful in corporate America, you have to know how to play the game, is what she says.
Yep.
And going back to the industry, okay, so maybe her publishing industry has an underrepresentation of Black people, but I guarantee you there are other industries that have an overrepresentation. And depending on the part of the country you're in as well. In Houston, we have a high amount of minorities here. So there are going to be probably more of them in certain companies than others. So it's all relative, right?
Yeah.
It's ridiculous that there should be, equal representation everywhere.
Right. And there is a game you play in corporate America. I've struggled surviving it for 20 years. And the game is called working really, really hard and showing your value.
Yeah, exactly. And I had a comment on that too, because, the dad's saying, nor should they have to. I kind of agree with them on this. I hated corporate America. I was in a company for 5 years where I hated it every day. That's why I left and started my own business. It's not just Black people who are struggling in corporate America. It's everyone who doesn't like having to put on the fake face and go to the meetings and, schmooze the people. Oh, it was the worst.
I don't know anyone, and I know people from mail clerks to CEOs. I don't know anyone who doesn't begrudge going to the office and playing the corporate America game. It has nothing to do with race.
No one wants to do it. Yeah. If you don't like it, you can get out of it, So the parents go on and they're talking about, we have to prepare him for this. That's why it's important that Jordan learns the rules now. And they argue about it, basically.
Yeah. And what are the rules? The rules that there are oppressors and oppressed, and you need to learn where you stand in this world. We're teaching this to children.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next page here, if my computer will cooperate. So he's saying it's hard being at school here. There's a lot of there would be a lot of pressure if I went out with Ashley. I guess Ashley is the girl that he likes.
Yep. And then he's imagining.
Yeah.
This is great.
I know. So I thought this was interesting. So she says, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry. This one just really upset me. So Ashley, the white girl, is meeting all of the friends and family and neighbors of the colored boyfriend in this scenario. And they're all, like, hey, how's it going? And nothing's really happening. But then the boy of color meeting all the white friends. And so, first of all, the insinuation that white people only have white friends and neighbors people of color only. So that's ridiculous. But he's meeting all of the white friends and neighbors, and they are standoffish. The dog is trying to attack.
Mm-hmm.
The dog of color is, attacking. One of them is saying, and he's like, please don't call the police.
Yeah. She says, please call me Ashley. And he says, please don't call the police.
Uh-huh. And then I think there's a woman down below calling 911, and somebody else is clutching their valuables. I mean, it's
really? Yeah. Yeah, she's calling and pointing.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, this implies that every white person in the world has never met a black person and wouldn't know how to react to their white friend having a black boyfriend. It's crazy.
Right.
What is this, 1960?
I've never seen this scenario in my life. And look at the girl of color. It's kind of going toward Ashley, pointing, but then the white mom and the white kid, he's hiding behind her.
He's hiding.
As if he's afraid. I promise you, if he read this, he would be afraid, but...
Yeah, I'm sure, because this book is dividing people more than bringing them together.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I thought that was hilarious, though, the differences. Okay, so, and to his credit, he did point out the biases that black families have as well. Like, if he said, if I dated a white girl, I'd never hear the end of it from my aunt or something like that.
Or a girl named Ashley. Yeah.
Yeah, a girl named Ashley.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He does say in a 2019 interview, the author talks about, it's on YouTube, he talks about how this book covers these microaggressions, all of these things that apparently even the dogs have microaggressions. He talks about all these things. And he said, because he didn't want it to come across as angry, he injected humor. Well,
oh, wow.
Maybe you should think twice about what you're peddling to children.
Yeah.
If you have to soften it with humor.
The angry perspective that you're trying to present here by sugarcoating it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so this is crazy. So Secret Santa, final day. He has Ashley as his Secret Santa, and he gives her sweet potato pie. And do you know anyone in the world who doesn't know what a sweet potato pie is? Because I guess Ashley doesn't.
I didn't understand this page.
Yeah.
I really didn't. So I think the insinuation,
she's Jewish or something, because she says, what are sweet potatoes? Oh, they're yams. What's a yam? Is it like a giant knish? Is that like a Jewish sweet or something?
Yeah, I don't know if the author Googled like what is a common Jewish food and tried to make it not seem like it was critical race theory, because he's like, look, I threw in, I don't know what he's doing here. It didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but I guess the point he's trying to make is they don't see eye to eye on their cultures, on their stuff. And in the end here, she says, she takes it and she walks away and says, okay, then thanks for the yam pie, Jordan. As she's walking away, and he says, you're welcome, ? Do you know any girls who, if a guy gives her a pie, she would act like that?
No. And you see in the rest of the book that she likes him a lot.
Okay.
So if he gave her a moldy loaf of bread, she would have been grateful.
Yeah, she would have been smiling and happy. Yeah, these characters aren't real. These aren't real people.
No.
Okay, so, and I think it's important to set that up, though, for this next page where he's talking to, what's the other kid's name? Drew. Okay, so it's Jordan and Drew.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know, this Secret Santa stuff is freaking me out. Look at what I got. And look at this stuff.
This.
Day 1, cookies shaped like basketballs. Day 2, a gift certificate for KFC. And then, okay, so apparently someone at the school has given him these.
That was his Secret Santa gift. So because he's a boy of color, and because white people don't know better, because
don't know anything about black people except for chicken and basketball.
Obviously, that's what I would give any boy of color.
Yeah. We wouldn't bother to find out who the person really is underneath the skin. We would just go with, oh, he's black. Let's give him a KFC card. This is so insulting.
I mean, could you imagine an 8-year-old, a 7 or 8-year-old reading this?
Yeah, right. I mean, they would think that every white person out there is stupid and racist. So he says the third day he got a chocolate Santa. So if you put the three together, that what they're trying to say is this other white kid is racist and trying to pick on him, basically.
Right. And you don't know whether it's accidental. You don't know whether it's the conscious or unconscious bias, and that's the point of microaggressions. Aggressions is we have to address them because they're there, whether you know it or not.
Yeah.
My children, I'm not letting them see these books, but I guarantee you they would not understand these references. I'm 43. I get them. I don't like that I get them, but they would not understand these, and hopefully they never will.
Yeah, this would be kind of confusing, I think, to a kid.
Oh, it'd be a disaster. I had my 16-year-old read through this, and he didn't understand half of it. He is more racist than he was.
You're right, because it's teaching them stereotypes.
It taught him stuff he had no idea. Yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah. Okay, so this next one. So this switches to, he's an artist and he does comic books. So this is a page from his comic book. He calls it, "Look What I Drew, a comic about my friend." So his name is Jordan. His friend's name is Drew. And it says, "Of all the people in the world, the one who's most like me is my friend Drew. We like the same movies, video games, blah, 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 etc. And we both know what it's like to be really different at a school like RAD." I guess RAD is their private school that has mostly white people.
Right.
And he says, "Hey, my name is Drew. Want to be alone together?" I thought that was a weird line, but I guess he means we both feel alone, so let's be friends. He says, "Okay, but as much as I hate to admit it, because he's a lot taller than me and his skin is darker, the way that people see us and treat us couldn't be more different." And it shows him as a little puppy and Drew as, I guess, a hippopotamus or a rhinoceros or something.
Oh, I think it's a toothy pit bull, because one is a boy. They're both boys of color, but one is very light and the other is darker.
Okay, right. So they treat the light-skinned one as if he's not black, and they run a screaming eek from Drew because he has darker skin.
Exactly.
Okay, so, and then it continues. "They don't judge us the same on the street." Oh, let me get scrolled down here. "They don't watch us the same in stores."
Yep. She's, just in case you didn't get it, they had to write "clutching valuables" because he's a boy of color. Well,
and while they'll say things to him like, I would have never thought you were this smart," looking at his A+, they'll say things to me like, "Oh, you're not like the others, Jordan. You're not really black."
So I've heard those two things out of Joe Biden's mouth, but people I know do not say things like that.
That's so true. Didn't he say that about Obama?
He totally said, and he said that he said poor kids are just as smart as white kids. That's a direct Joe Biden. And it's his age group, and it's also the fact that he's a racist idiot.
Yeah, he's racist underneath, and he can't keep it hidden because he's senile. "Of all the people in the world, the one who's most like me is my friend Drew. It's the world that makes us different." Oh gosh, look at this final panel. "I don't like the way that guy is looking at us. I'm calling the police." And it's the world as a metaphor for the person who treats them differently.
Exactly. All because he's a darker boy of color than a lighter boy of color.
Yeah. Okay, so here's one more of his drawings. So here's what I don't get. "Adults always tell kids to be honest and tell the truth, blah, blah, blah. They say they want to teach us to be good people when we grow up." Look at that. It's literally the American flag, right? So the enemy is the one teaching them to be good people and waving the American flag.
Yeah.
But whenever something happens, they always seem to side with the bad kids. And I had to read this a couple of times before I realized, bad kids is code for white kids. Because if you look at the next few drawings here, this kid is white, this kid is black.
Right.
I know your nose hurts, Marcus, but Mac's fist probably hurts too. I'd say you're even. What?
Yeah.
What adult ever says that? If one kid just punches another kid?
No adult says that and takes the side. That's never happened.
Yeah, especially not in schools.
No,
oh my gosh.
Completely invented.
Maybe in 1950, a teacher would have said that, but even
sadly, yes, but not now.
Say your fist probably hurts too. Crazy. Okay, so or this. Yes, she bullies your daughter daily, but that may be her way of reaching out. Why not invite her over for a play date? So this is a white mom who's making excuses for her white daughter, and this is the black mom with the daughter who gets bullied.
Exactly.
Okay. And the next one, and while a great kid like Drew, and Drew is the darker skinned friend, right? Well, a great kid like Drew gets told, be humble. You can't walk around the school like you own the place. And this is the teacher telling him this. The same teacher will say to kids like Andy, and I'm assuming Andy is the white kid in the comic. I think I have him in a panel further down. He's like a cocky white kid. He'll say to him, be confident. When you walk into a room, own that room.
Exactly.
Again,
the boy of color from the teacher, be humble, and the white boy like, oh, be confident. That's just
and what he's saying here is like, this is just how it is. This is how it is for all Black kids, and all white kids get special treatment all the time. Like these broad generalities, this isn't helping anyone. This is teaching kids, right? The world is unfair to people of color in all situations.
Right. And it doesn't matter that it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that this doesn't happen ever. I'm sure that this occasionally happens, but for children to think that somehow this is the norm, like you said, generalized, it's harmful to them. Oh, this one's the worst. This last one.
Yeah. And while the Drews go through life honest but poor, the Andys become dishonest but rich. And in the panel, the guy say, Andy is at the front. He's like leading some organization. And this guy's saying, sir, our new crate raised salmon is gray and toxic. And then Andy says, paint it pink and send it to the inner cities. We'll call it fillet of soul.
Yeah. So it's not enough that it's not enough that the teachers take their side as they grow up. White kids will obviously be dishonest and just go in and poison the inner cities.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, this assumption that if you're dishonest and white, you become rich, and if you're honest, you stay poor, that's a misunderstanding of how economics work too, right? If you run a business and you're a dishonest person, eventually your cheating of other people is going to catch up to you, and you will not have business. Like,
exactly.
I know that I run a small business, and I know the better I treat my clients, the more they send other people to me, the more money I make. It's just like, that's how the free market works. And we don't even have time to get into that, but these Marxist perspectives are definitely against free market economics. So
exactly. It doesn't even make sense. It's not even logical. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, okay, so if the guy is so focused on poisoning the inner cities with toxic salmon, like, he doesn't have time for that. Like, to say, we're just going to send it to the inner cities. Like, you would just say, let's just try to sell it wherever we can, right? And by the way, that's the fault of the inner cities. If these inner city schools are buying poorly grown or raised salmon, you know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
You don't have to buy it.
Right. It would be, and if they did that and it was horrible, they wouldn't buy it again. Like you're saying, right. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibilities that schools would waste their money on promoting critical race theory, but not on checking up the food that they're feeding to children. Yeah.
Right. They serve garbage to the kids, but they spend all their money on this stuff.
Their diversity and inclusion training.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So even though my school wants to do the right thing, I don't think they will. And then we say, wait, why do we have to go to a diversity conference? We are the diversity. It's a coach, a cook, and a maintenance guy. Mm-hmm. So they think they shouldn't have to go to the re-education camp.
I mean, white people obviously don't want to, go to the classes. Oh, this one's terrible. Oh.
Yeah. So
I can't imagine my children reading this.
Oh,
my 16-year-old didn't understand this.
Yeah. I hadn't heard this term until maybe a couple of years ago. Yeah, because, if you don't hang around with people who talk like this, you don't know what kind of racist stuff has been out there in the past. Right. Again, like, by pointing all this stuff out, he's further dividing the communities. If you just say, hey, we're all the same, we're all human beings, and we should love each other equally and have, equality in society, equal opportunities. Like, if you just say that, right, and not point out all this other crap, then the racism goes away.
Yeah, oh my God, for my 8-year-olds, they go to, Katy's a super diverse district. And when they talk about different kids, it's just descriptors. It's the one with the glasses, the one with the brown hair, the one with the brown skin. It's all just descriptors. They don't even label people as different races. They just describe them. And it's so sweet. That's the way, I mean, that's just the way kids are, unless you make them differently through literature like this.
Right. I mean, we're all different, right? With some red hair, some brown hair, brown eyes, blue eyes,
Yeah.
So that's the way you describe people. And that doesn't mean that you don't like them because they're different from you.
Right.
So what's happening here? He's getting picked on by his friends from the black side of town, I think.
No, this one is the Morio. This is where the white boy calls this one. So this boy of color, I think there are 3 boys of color in total in the school, Riverdale Academy. And this is one of them. And he actually is from a well-to-do family. And so the boys call him Morio, and it doesn't make sense until they explain it below. And so now my 16-year-old knows what this means. So that's great.
Right.
Because I had to read this.
Why do they call him Morio? And then he says, I heard because it rhymes with Oreo, but I still don't get it. Oh, I do, unfortunately.
And then they'll explain it to the children, just in case you don't. Right below is an explainer.
Oh, here we go.
Yep.
White on the inside, black on the outside.
Yeah. So kids can have that in their repertoire.
In their lexicon.
Exactly.
Okay, so next one. Oh.
And people try to argue, well, my child has been called that, therefore other children need to be taught about it. That doesn't make sense. I mean, that's like so we need to teach every child everything that bad
which words are off limits, because then you get into the game of limiting speech, right? You can't say this, can't say this, can't say that. You're not changing the thought process of the people who would say that. You're just restricting their voice.
Exactly. And we're teaching it to other children. I mean, there are bad things in the world. There's pedophilia. Are we going to have books about pedophilia so we can teach kids that that's out there? There are things you just don't teach.
Right. Yeah. And again, the more you put it under a microscope, the more you focus on it, the worse it gets,
Yeah.
Oreo might have gone away if we weren't just bringing it up all the time. But don't worry, Jordan, most kids here are pretty cool. So he's trying to comfort him. And this is where we meet Andy, the jerk white kid. Yep. So he says, so who's this? One of Grayson's middle school friends? And this guy says, no, this is Jordan. He's in first form. What does first form mean?
It means because it's 7 through 12. So, or is it 8 through 12? It's the first year. He's in first year of Riverdale Academy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It's not a freshman, though. It's not 9th grade. It's first year.
Okay. Got it. So he says he's with us, and he says, you're in first form? Wow, Gordon, you're really small. So he calls him the wrong name, Gordon. He says, it's Jordan. And then he says, I'm Andy Peterson. So what sport do you play, Gordon? He totally ignores the fact that he just said his name is Jordan and mispronounces his name again. This is like a caricature. This reminds me of the guy in the movie, the 80s movies where the white guy was like the executive and he's tossing his power around, and you may tell him your name, but he's not going to remember it. He's going to repeat it again the wrong way. It's such an 80s stereotype.
Oh, it's ridiculous. And there are teachers in the school, the white teachers do the same thing. They just can't get their names right.
Just can't get it right.
No.
And he says, and what are you anyway? That seems like he's asking him, where is he from? Or do you know what the next page has on it? I don't think I have that clip.
I don't remember. Okay. Yeah. I honestly don't. Every page was so bad, it was hard to pick out which pages to talk about.
You can only take so many screenshots, right? Okay, so here's Jordan's tips for taking the bus. Again, this is the little comic he drew. So go ahead.
Sorry, what you don't see here is that Liam, there's another white boy, rides in a Range Rover to school. Meanwhile, Jordan takes the bus because that's just the life for the.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
He's not an Oreo, so
No.
he can't do that.
Exactly.
Okay. So basically, he starts off on the bus on his side of town where he's more comfortable. And as the bus gets closer to the white side of town or closer to his upper crust school, he has to change who he is or how he presents himself. So this is a little bit weird. Fitting in on the ride to school is hard work. I have to be like a chameleon. For example, in Washington Heights, I try to look tough. So he's got his hoodie on. Inwood is a little different, so I can lose the hood. No one ever smiles in the morning, so you won't catch me doing that either. Kingsbridge is where all the public school kids get off, so it's okay to take off my shades. I can even draw. Last comes Riverdale, where I do my best not to look cool at all. No shades and definitely no hood. I don't even like to draw because people might think I'm going to use my markers to tag the bus. Does that mean graffiti? Like he's going to
yes
on the bus?
My 16-year-old asked me that, and I'm like, yeah, that means graffiti. Like it.
Yeah, I mean,
author is trying so hard to create division between people. He's having to invoke references from the 80s,
right?
And to try to create division.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at this picture, the police officer is glaring over at him just because he has his paper and markers out. The woman's looking at her while she holds her daughter close, with her arm around her. It's just crazy. When has a white person ever been offended by a little black kid drawing with markers? It's not a thing. And then the other scenario is instead of using his markers, he says, I love quadratic equations, don't you? So he's implying here that he's not accepted unless he tries to act white, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, I'm just doing math homework. And now we like you.
Yeah. Oh, and here he gets off the bus and they say, that new kid is kind of cool, yet so non-threatening.
Because that's what girls say.
I mean, this whole thing is supposed to make you feel awful if you're a white person, right?
Oh, it's terrible.
Okay, so here, this is like the cream of the crop for me. Out of all the ones you sent me, this is the craziest. So we've got the teachers at school, all of the white teachers who apparently are major bigots are having to go through diversity training. Is that right?
They are.
So you see here, they're saying kids today are soft. In my day, teachers would beat us with common classroom items, slide rules, abacuses, mimeograph supplies. So, they're reminiscing about the good old days, right?
Yeah, before diversity and inclusion training.
Yeah.
And that one is named Karen, by the way.
Oh, really? This woman
here? That's helpful. So,
what do you know? Just a coincidence, you think? So they're talking, and I'll see you after the break. And I agree to ask you both diverse books. I don't know. So they're just talking.
Yeah. So she comes back from D&I. She's the librarian, and she comes back from diversity and inclusion training, and is immediately like, "Oh my God, we need to put diverse books in the library."
Oh, the diversity training changed her.
Oh, obviously,
It made her a better person. Wow.
Yeah.
What are diversity books, by the way?
I mean, I guess this is one of them.
I know, yeah. This guy wants to get his books put in libraries.
Oh, God, and I've been saying, too, there's not a shortage of great literature. We don't have to read this garbage.
Right.
To teach our kids. We can read actual historical, right here. I just read with my 16-year-old the narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass.
Oh, really?
This really happened. And I promise you it'll teach you what you need to know without blaming white people for the current societal issues.
Huh. Yeah. I'll have to read that. I don't know much about his life. It sounds good. So this last part, the teacher gets off the bus. He said, I invited you down. He's talking to Drew and Jordan. I invited you down so you could see this for yourselves. We realize the only way for you not to be uncomfortable here all the time is for the adults to be equally uncomfortable, at least some of the time. So we had some tough conversations this week, didn't we, Karen?
So you're right, this page is so important. It is not possible for the kids of color to be comfortable unless the white teachers are uncomfortable.
Right.
That's not true.
I mean,
I don't think they're uncomfortable treating them as the same as they do other kids. That insinuates that white teachers, they're uncomfortable treating kids of color differently than white boys. And I don't think that that's true.
No. And I mean, that suggests that, okay, so in the past, Black people have gone through racism and segregation and difficult things, right? So since they have had to go through difficult things in the past, white people should have to go through uncomfortable, difficult situations, right? It has to be flipped. We can't just all rise together and say, here's a great new evolved position that our society is in, where we all just look at each other as people. Oh no, it can't be that. It's that white people have to be taken down a notch. You have to have put your boot on the neck of the white man in order to make them feel the way that you have felt maybe in the past.
Exactly. And only then. Yeah, no, it's about a new oppressed class of people.
Yeah. It's kind of a bummer.
It is. These are not uplifting books. As much as he says he's trying to inject humor, they're dark. And it's divisive. And that's exactly, I mean, we've heard Al Sharpton talk about, they have money in this. They want to perpetuate racism because that's what funds them. So I don't think this is any different. I don't know that this author necessarily has that in mind. I want to perpetuate racism. His heart might be in the right place. A lot of people latch on to critical race theory thinking, I'm going to end racism. But the only reason that they think that's the only reason that's even in their ideology is because they're ingrained and indoctrinated in this idea that it's not possible unless, like you said, you put your boot on the neck of a white person.
Right.
It has to be flipped.
Mm-hmm. And this idea of systemic racism, I mean, that suggests that every system of government that we have, every small business, every private business in our society, everywhere you turn, all of these different systems, there's racism being perpetuated by the people who lead it. And that doesn't make sense, because if you own a company, let's say that you say, I don't like Black people, so I'm not going to hire them. You are restricting the amount of good people that you could have, that you could hire. And I mean, the bottom line is so important when you're in business, right? Your margin levels are so low and you have all this, they're so small. And you have all this competition around you. The guy down the street would have, no restrictions on who he hires, and he gets the best people for the job, and he's going to overtake you, right? So if you just walk it out logically, also, I mean, logistically, just having that kind of policy and getting away with it, the time and effort you'd have to put into your HR department, like, okay, we're going to interview these people, but we're not going to hire them. And who in the HR department is not going to call you out and be a whistleblower? And, it doesn't make sense.
No, the idea that this happens, so it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen ever, but the idea that it happens systemically, I know very few truly racist people from what I could see. And I mean, they're few and far between. So they exist, but
they're probably not running things.
They're anomalies.
They're losers.
They're completely losers. Yeah.
If you're a racist and you're bald-faced about it, no one's going to want to work with you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the people I've come across who have that mindset, they're not successful in business. They're not successful in anything because they're walking around with this bigotry.
Yeah.
But that's what this author is doing, is he's trying to flip it and create bigotry on the other side.
Yeah.
So it's, anybody who walks around.
If you can't do the reverse of what you're doing without it being extremely offensive, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it, right? So if, let's say there was a white author who wrote a kid's book about how uncomfortable the kid was around Black people, that's the flip of this book. You wouldn't get that published.
No, and when the author, after I did this petition, and when the author doxed me, he put the picture of me up and said who I was, who had started the petition.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The first comment was, "Oh, of course she's a white blonde lady."
Of course.
I mean, I am.
Well,
but
that
how
means
is
you're
that
racist.
not racist? I was like, okay.
You're judging me based on my skin color. Oh,
What if I dox somebody and then the first comment was like, "Of course it's a black." What I just.
there's no way. There's no way you could or would do that. Yeah, it's just, it's a mess. So, okay, so let's go back to your story a little bit. You find out that this guy is coming to speak, you research his books, and then what do you do next?
So first I went to the principal and the teachers of my kid's school, and they were super accommodating. They were like, "No problem, we will pull them out during this presentation and they'll do something else." And they don't punish them. I hope, but they just give them another activity. So that was good. So first and foremost, I'm protecting my kids from this type of material. And then I went to the superintendent and just let him know, "Have you read these books? And this is what's in them." And he didn't deny or confirm that that's what's in these books. He didn't say whether he'd read them either. He just said that Katy ISD does not push critical race theory. Whether he thinks that they're not critical race theory, whether he doesn't, I don't know where he was coming from, but he basically was like, "Leave me alone. I'm not dealing with this." So I went to the school board meeting and talked about it with the school board, and they seemed possibly interested. And so I don't know whether they looked into it or not. But I went ahead and started the petition because I was talking to other parents and they had no idea. I mean, I realized that I'm a weirdo and I read everything my kids come home with. Most people don't. So once I started telling people, they were trying to opt their kids out. And so the second flyer that came home did give parents an opt-out option. So that was good. Mm-hmm. But again, who's looking? Not everybody looks at the flyers who comes home with their kids. And what if they missed one? What if it didn't even, because they were streaming this into the classroom during the instructional day, into 3rd through 5th grade. And these books are recommended for junior high, by the way. So it's also, it's like, it's not even appropriate material for elementary anyway. So I started the petition and I kept appealing to the school board, and I ended up going to my Texas senator, Senator Kolkhorst, and I got to speak with her policy advisor, Allison Brock, and she gave me some pointers on House Bill 3979, which is the one where teachers and school districts cannot be promoting critical race theory.
Right.
It doesn't have a lot of teeth in it because it's only if it's under the guise of social studies, and we don't know how this was being presented.
Yeah.
But we just kept getting signatures. We got up to almost 500 signatures before change.org removed the petition for being against their community guidelines.
They removed your petition? Wow.
Yeah. So, but I guess we had made enough noise to where they did postpone the Zoom call. Now, the author said,
I should say, I did not know that they removed your petition, because in the article I read about you, the national article, it said the petition has been taken down. And it made it seem like you just took it down. You just abandoned your cause, took it away.
Yeah, that would be the CNN article. And, they're not always exactly.
Yeah. I went straight to CNN. I was like, I want to see what they're saying about Bonnie.
Yeah. So no, it was taken down by change.org after it was reported. So for, whatever. Apparently I'm racist.
Yeah.
So I think it just, so I have not heard from anyone in the school districts as far as administration or school board, nor do I expect to. I am a parent. We have 86,000 students. I'm one parent of, all of this is the students. So I wouldn't expect to hear from them. So I don't know why they postponed it. I'm assuming it's because some of them read it themselves and realized, God, we cannot be teaching. I'm hoping that that's what happened.
Yeah.
The author seems to think that he will be invited back for an event outside of school. Mm-hmm. That's fine. I don't care about that. It's just not appropriate material for instructional during the day, classroom time. Yeah.
Unless you're going to have a counterbalanced approach,
I mean,
And I don't know what that would be.
The KKK tenants? Like, I have no idea. Like, it promotes segregation. So
Right,
I'm trying to think on the other side of it, what would promote? I mean, it's just
the other side is pretty much every other commonsensical American who just believes that we're all equal.
We
We're
could
all
just do that, the
humans.
neutral. Right, exactly.
Yeah. But right, they're not going to do that either.
No.
So a lot of people are talking about, the idea of censorship and book burning, and, oh, this mother came and got these books pulled out of school. That wasn't what you did, right?
No.
Are these in the kids' library? Do you know?
So I believe so. There, and I'm not the only upset parent. I mean, we got almost 500 signatures in maybe 4 days. So there's another parent, and I don't know who it is, who completed a request for reconsideration of instructional materials. And that was to ask the district to review these books in any library where they happen to be in the district.
Okay.
And the district has a process for this, and it's happened before. And what they do is once they receive one of these forms, they pull the materials and they have 15 days to review it. And then they either approve or deny, and they either put them back or they pull them permanently. So I was not advocating for that, although I have no problem with it if they're pulled, but that was actually another parent who is equally concerned.
Right. Yeah, she's taking the steps that she feels she needs to.
Exactly.
I mean, that might be where I differ with her a little bit, because it irks me that we've taken books like Tom Sawyer out of libraries,
I agree.
It goes both ways. And it's like, okay, let all these ideas exist out there in the marketplace, and I'll educate my kid. I would be like you, checking their books that they're reading. What'd you read this week? And let's talk about it. And if I see something like this, you better bet we're going to talk about it.
Exactly. And I'm with you. And I've said in a couple of other interviews that I don't, this is going to make some of the mommies mad at me and daddies, but I don't necessarily agree with pulling them out of the libraries.
Yeah.
Having access to all books is wonderful. And there are things that I read that I don't agree with, but it's still good to know and understand at the appropriate age. I just have the problem with it being mandatory instructional curriculum.
Right. Like a mandatory presentation that your kids would have to go to.
Exactly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but did you say you've watched some of his interviews and presentations that he's done? So you kind of knew what he was going to say. And he does talk about critical race theory topics.
He doesn't say critical race theory. He talks about microaggressions. But if you do research on what the terminology is, one of the conceptual founders of critical race theory came up with the term racial microaggressions as the verbal and nonverbal things white people do to make people of color.
So he uses code language, but clearly we know what his topic is.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Bonnie, I just applaud you. Thank you so much for taking this on. I mean, it's amazing to me that you started off with a flyer that your kids brought home, and you did the research and said, no, this is not going to happen for my kids. And you went and you talked to the appropriate people. You got the petition. I'm glad that you're out there fighting for us and Katy, and, fighting for your kids' education.
Thank you. Yeah, we're going to keep doing it. There's so much more to do.
I know. It's like every day, every week, we got a new hill to climb.
It's 2 steps forward and 5 steps back.
I know. Well, thank you again. Thanks for joining me this evening.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Well, everyone, have a great night, and we will see you next week. Bye.